Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today we have a very special guest who is dedicated to helping high-achieving women, and frankly, all of us, break free from emotional eating and finally achieve lasting health and peace with food. She's an author, a dynamic speaker, and a seasoned coach with a powerful message. With a background as a hospital chaplain and counselor, she brings a unique blend of deep compassion and practical, effective tools to her work. Her powerful TEDx talk on this very topic has been viewed by over 800,000 people. She's the author of the book, What's Really Eating You? Her core philosophy is a game changer. Emotional eating isn't the problem, it's the messenger. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the incredible Renee Jones. Renee, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. Now, for those of the listening audience who are not familiar with Renee Jones, could you share a little bit about yourself with us?
Sure. I have been a coach for, 13 years now. I was a counselor, and then I went through a kind of a transformation and decided that I needed to help people with the same issues that I was working with. So I shifted to coaching. So I've got that master's in marriage family counseling. I spent 20 years as a hospital chaplain, so I know how to do rapid therapy. And I have enjoyed working with people and helping them find their place and heal their hearts.
Right. Okay. So, marriage and family therapist, you say. So, that's an LMFT. Is that right? You're actually a licensed LMFT, or no? Or you used to be a licensed LMFT?
No, I did not take it that far because I knew that I was going in a different direction, but I wanted to know what I was doing because as a chaplain, you do a lot of counseling. And I mean, I can do counseling. I just can't call myself a therapist.
Right. Well, that's good. It's a very crowded field. It seems like everyone's a therapist these days anyway. So you were a hospital chaplain for 20 years. That must have been like pretty hardcore, I would imagine. A lot of really tough conversations.
Yeah. In fact, during my residency, the other residents called me the chaplain of death because every time I was on call, people died all over that hospital. And I was like, what is it? And someone said, well, you're good at it. I said, this is not something you want to be good at.
Yeah,
But
right.
yes,
No,
I mean,
but
tough conversations.
I mean, I can't really imagine the things that you learned about life, and people from doing that for 20 years. Why did you stay with it for so long? I just can't imagine, putting myself like in those situations day after day for decades like that.
Well, the thing is, people know they need you at that point, and you can help them. So I did that, but I shifted to part-time because it was hard. And there are a lot of people who do it, 20, 30, 40 years. But I started working for a service where we did different kinds of hospitals. We did long-term acute care, we did hospice, but we also did a behavioral health hospital, and that was fun. So just finding ways to do it a little differently helped me a lot.
Right. Yeah, I can still imagine, though, that, you can only take so much of that. And then you became a coach.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me about your coaching work. What's that like?
Well, I help women in particular, some men, who have been struggling on the diet yo-yo for decades and don't know how they are not getting it done and keeping it done. So I help them find what's driving that behavior bus of self-sabotage so they can take back the keys.
All right. So you are specifically a diet coach or
An
a life
emotional
coach?
eating coach.
An emotional eating coach, right? So I think that a lot of people have an issue with emotional eating. I mean, like obesity in America is like, what's the rate? Is it 65% or something like that? I mean, like
that. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, like it's a huge number. Like when you walk down the street, you see all these people, and a lot of them are just like huge. You're going like, man, what is going on here? So Renee, what is going on here? why are people so huge in America? Why do we struggle so much with maintaining a healthy, BMI?
So, unfortunately, I can speak to this because I spent 40 years on the diet yo-yo myself. and I broke it in 2012, and I've maintained my weight ever since. So I understand it from a personal perspective as well as from a counseling kind of coaching perspective. Essentially, we learn this from birth, Seb, because when a baby cries, we tend to put something in its mouth, right? Because oral soothing is a thing, and it could be the bottle or the breast or a pacifier, or if you're out grocery shopping, you hand them a piece of candy. So we know that that works for us. And when we are feeling unsafe emotionally, or frustrated, or sad, mad, lonely, bored, whatever, it's like, okay, this works. This does work. And unfortunately, we go from that pacifier to a donut, and then pizza, and sometimes smoking, or thumb sucking, or nail biting, that sort of thing. It's all the same thing. We're looking for some way to calm ourselves, to make us feel better. Safety, and food is always available. It's easy, and it's legal.
Right. It's still legal at this time anyway. So, but I would imagine, though, that this is also the same everywhere in the world, right? I mean, like everyone, is probably raised in a very similar fashion, at least when it comes to like, soothing a quiet baby and like, stress eating and all that. But I'm pretty well traveled, and I can't help but notice that, the rates of obesity in the United States are like 2 or 3 times higher, or so it seems, than in most of the rest of the world. I mean, particularly Asia. There are hardly any fat people over there. So, like, what is it? Is it just the food that we eat, or are we especially more stressed and more prone to, this kind of, lifestyle than other parts of the world?
Well, unfortunately, other parts of the world are catching up. There are certain parts of the world that are also, after some of our fast food gets there. But unfortunately, a lot of the foods that are available in this country are not allowed in other countries because they are more processed. They have more seed oils in them. They're just not as healthy as other parts. And, the stuff that's unhealthy is really easy. It doesn't take long to make. If you're making it yourself, you just throw it together. And, we get caught up in all of the foods that make us feel better. So, and, as Americans, we think more is better. So if we're not quite there yet, we'll add a little more. And we eat really fast. I mean, I remember my grandmother, bless her, she made terrific pies. Well, she made terrific everything. But we would sit down after the meal and have a piece of pie. And sometimes we'd eat it so fast that we didn't realize that we'd eaten it. So we had to have another piece, right? So we eat incredibly fast, and that doesn't give our bodies a chance to catch up, so we need more. Yeah? So there's some of that. There's some of the, just eat more. Why not? The serving sizes at restaurants have enlarged. Even our plates have enlarged, right? So when I was in grad school, I wasn't dating much, and I thought I'm never going to be able to get married, but I want to have some nice dishes. So I started collecting a pattern of dishes that I liked. And then Mr. Jones came along. I was like, okay, you're stuck with these because I've collected several place settings of it. So these will be our everyday things. But what was interesting to me is that those first sets came with a plate that was like 9 inches. When I was getting married, the plates were 10.5 inches. So the actual size of our dinner plates had increased by 1.5 inches. We tend to fill a plate. And if it's there, you eat it. So those are just some of the things.
Because there's starving people in India, or there used to be anyway. And now there's not. Yeah, it's interesting. So I lived for a year in Malaysia, and so last year I took the family to Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand for our winter break. And we did a food tour in Singapore, that's one of the big things about Singapore and Malaysia and Thailand is the food's amazing, right? And so the nice lady was taking us on the food tour, and we were at this food court, and she goes, it's just so sad now. Like the young kids, they don't want to eat any of this delicious food. They want to come down. They want to grab Big Macs, and like whatever else they have. Jollibee is big in Asia, right? And then they go back and they sit on their Xbox and they play video games, right?
A lack of exercise, absolutely.
A lack of exercise, and then speaking of other places catching up, like Australia is not far behind. I don't think the UK is that far behind either. And also, I remember like 10, 12 years ago, I read the exciting news that actually Mexicans are now fatter than Americans, right? They like edged us out by like a pound or two, right? So it certainly is a growing phenomenon. But how much do you think it has to do with like what we eat, like the seed oils and like the endless carbs and all that stuff, right? Versus just like lifestyle? Is it really more of the ingredients in the food that we eat, or is it more like the lack of exercise and sedentary lifestyle, all that?
Oh, I think it's a combination, actually. We do eat an enormous number of carbs, and I know that if I put a carb and a fat together, it's going to settle on my hips somewhere. So I try to keep those separate, but that's not what a lot of people do. We are too sedentary. We are too lenient. We don't like the discipline at all. So we will just keep adding, and it's just not it. It's not good for us. It's really not good for us. But everyone else is doing it. And I have one client who said, my sister is a rail and I am not. What's up with that? I said, you didn't get that body. We don't like to think about what it takes to get to where we want to go. And we really want everybody to be basically the same so we don't have to work as hard. Men generally, there are some men who fatten a little more easily. But they can also take it off easier than most women can. Bless you. But it's still something that we've got to figure out. What is it that we really want? And what's driving this behavior so that we can get free of it?
Yeah, so what is driving this behavior? You talk about self-sabotage. And so, well, first of all, let's back up. What is self-sabotage exactly? And how does it manifest itself beyond just, overeating?
Well, self-sabotage is wanting something else more than you want your goal. And we tend to do it when we are feeling like, gosh, I don't know, am I able to do this? I'm not sure that's, gosh, I don't know how to do that. And it's always something within us that says we can't do it, right? I could have easily self-sabotaged when I did my TEDx, because almost a year to the day before, my husband said, Renee, I think you want to think about being a speaker. And I was like, love, I am never going to be a speaker, because it wasn't in my wheelhouse at all. And almost a year to the day later, I was standing on that stage. Fortunately, I had no idea what a TEDx was when I did it. So I wasn't quite so scared as I might have been. But my nephews straightened me out afterwards. They were like, you did a TEDx? I said, is that a thing? They were like, yes. So if I had known that, it's so possible that I could have freaked myself out so much and not arrested that fear and that anxiety and sabotaged that. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And that happens with lots of things. People do get up to speak and suddenly they're racked with nerves because they didn't settle themselves beforehand. Now, we also self-sabotage in work. We will sabotage a relationship. And it's usually something like, I don't feel like I deserve this, or that I'm worthy of it, or that it's worth the cost.
Yeah, well, I see that happening in my own work as a realtor. I'll get going pretty well. I'll have a lot of things going on, right? And then I'll just sort of pull back, right? I won't be able to push myself necessarily all the time to the next level, right? Which always be closing, right? So you have to always be going for it, right? And I will self-sabotage with food or whatever, right? If I get stressed out, or especially when I get tired, like from lack of sleep or whatever, like happens to me all the time, like I will, like I'll overindulge or have a bunch of carbs, God forbid, when I really shouldn't be. So what are some of the tools that people can use when they, feel that they, because like, I know it. I know I shouldn't, do X, Y, or Z. I know it, right? But I do it anyway. It's almost like it's like a compulsion, right? So like, what are some of the tools that people can use to like not self-sabotage? What are some techniques?
Do not, above all else, do not depend on willpower. Willpower is a vanishing resource. Sometimes by 8 a.m. it's already gone. So we cannot depend on it. Therefore, we have to create systems for ourselves. We have to put some parameters around our work day or our goal setting so that we will actually be able to do it. I learned something, it's been a few years, but I learned that I do really well when I have external accountability, particularly if it's something I don't really want to do. So setting that up, some people can do whatever they want to do and get it done, no problem. Some people can do it as long as it makes sense to them, but they'll ask a lot of questions about it. I'm married to one of those. So as long as I give him plenty of data, then he will do things. I need that external accountability every time. I need someone to speak to say, these are my goals for the day. This is what I've done. And then there's some people who just can't do it no matter what unless they feel like it. Bless them. It's a different personality style. So I set up everything that I need to do so there's external accountability. I walk my dog every morning because it's good for him. But I always think about it as good for him because if it's just for me, I'm not going to get it done. So those are a couple of ideas.
So you in 2012 you stopped the yo-yo dieting and you maintained your weight since then. So what external accountability do you use specifically for that?
Well, here's the thing. I'm a weight loss coach, an emotional eating coach. The world looks at my waistline. So I have the world as my external accountability, and I'm very aware of that because I need integrity in what I do. And thankfully, I've had clients on every continent except Antarctica. I'm not sure what's going on with the penguins and scientists, but they don't need me, right? But that is extreme. I'll grant you that. But I also take some accountability in my clothes because beforehand I had 4 different sizes in my closet because you never knew what was going to happen, right? Now I have one size only. If I don't fit in those, I don't get, I guess I'm wearing sweats or something, but I'm not going to let it go that far because I have an alarm that goes off in my head because weight fluctuates. It just does. And when my scale goes up 4 pounds and stays there a couple of days, I'm thinking, okay, now we've got something going on. We need to figure out what that is so that we can get back to that.
Is it just water weight though? Because you can hold 4 pounds for a couple of days in water, right?
Sometimes. So again, you let it go for a couple of days. But if it's there for 3 or 4 days, there's something else going on. Yeah. Because we get creep on portions, right? We just get creep if you're eyeballing it, or you just think, just a little more is not going to hurt. Well, sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. But as long as you rein it in from there, you can maintain ongoing.
Right. Well, that must help a whole lot, having all these people worldwide, expecting you to be thin, I guess. But how do you work with your clients worldwide? Do you go worldwide? Do you travel for your business, or is it all just done over Zoom or whatever?
Mostly it's done over Zoom, and I tell you, COVID helped that. I used to have clients who came to my office, But of course, COVID stopped all of that. So I've got Zoom now. If they wanted to, a VIP day, I'd be happy to come to them. But that would be a little expensive.
Right. So what does it look like? When you have like a client intake, right? I mean, like, what does it take to work with somebody like you to overcome the self-sabotage? Are there like exercises that you have, not like necessarily physical exercises, but like, mental or like lifestyle or like habitual, like changes of habits or whatever? Take us through that. Like, what do you typically do to help people get back on the straight, narrow, and back on the skinny, as it were?
I love that. When we do talk nutrition, because that's important, and finding what works for your body is a real important part of that. And that doesn't mean it just makes you drop the weight. It also means keeps you satisfied and content. Because if you're not going to stay with it very long. We work on lifestyle change, not just a quick diet. I want people to lose the weight they want to lose, but I want them to do it slowly enough that they adjust to, okay, this is how we eat now. It's not just okay, I'm going to be on this diet, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, and then I go back to eating the way I always did. That's called a diet yo-yo, and we don't want to do that. We also look at some of the stuff that they're carrying. Is it emotional stuff, mental stuff, stressful stuff, family stuff? What is it that sends you off in a tizzy? Because if we can figure out how to manage that differently, then it won't upset you as much. So there's some behavioral, some emotional, and some building up of their belief in themselves that they can do this. Because I think the one common thing for most women in particular, and a few men, is self-esteem that crumbles at various times. So we do a lot of building on that to make sure, because if you are content and confident in yourself, a lot of this other stuff just goes away.
True. So are women more obese than men? I haven't really noticed that. I haven't really made an exhaustive study of it, but it seems to me that it's pretty tied.
Yeah.
There's not much of a difference there, I don't think.
There really isn't. But women are more readily open to dealing with it. I mean, I knew about diets in middle school. We learn about it so early in our lives, and we have all those pictures out there of the stick-thin models. I mean, you probably have seen the news in the last few weeks about some of the awards programs going on, and people saying, my word, they look like walking skeletons now. That's kind of beyond what Twiggy taught us in the 70s, right? And that can be unhealthy. You can be healthy at that size, but I would be a little more concerned about being that thin.
Right. Well, you mentioned that women have low self-esteem. Do you think it is because they are made to or felt they are made to be that Twiggy-like figure? Does that, because a lot of women are objectified and right. And I think that it's not only men who do this. I think a lot of women also make other women feel bad about how they look, right? Is that where that lack of self-esteem comes from? Is it body image essentially is what drives a lot of this, or is it really different for everybody?
Well, I'd say it depends. I mean, some of it is, what you learned growing up. Some of it is the awful playground experiences we all had. Some of it is that women can just be catty. We are not kind to each other sometimes. Some of it are the influencers we see, the magazine covers. It's like, I think all the designers actually design for a board rather than a woman's body. And in the last decade or so, with J-Lo and the larger posterior, we've got a little of that back. But it's still, you've got to be, You got to be so thin. And they've shown that Instagram has not been good for teens and preteen girls. But you do get that message early on. If you're not a stick, there's something wrong with you. You're not going to be as attractive.
Right. Well, J-Lo may not be a stick, or like Jennifer Aniston may not be a stick, and these are women who are in their 50s, but like, how much time and money do they spend like working on their bodies, right? I mean, it's like, it's got to be hours and hours a day that they invest into themselves to look like that. I don't think anybody, any normal person, really stands a chance to like look that good. And probably what we're seeing anyway is a lot of makeup too, right? That it's just an impossibly high standard, I think.
But not everyone recognizes that, so they look at it and think, "Oh, I've got to look like that. How am I going to get there?" Yeah.
Well, or even close, right? I mean, like, what if you're just close, right? I mean, like that certainly would be nice, to see for sure. So, like, okay, so we're talking about like, like diet and carbs and fat and all this. So, like, I think where a lot of people get off the rails is that, like, okay, they commit to like a healthy lifestyle, portion control, not a lot of carbs, like lean meats and, complete proteins and all this. And that's all good. And they're doing that for 2-3 months and like life is good. They've dropped 10, 20 pounds or whatever. A-okay, they're feeling great. And then it's Thanksgiving or someone's birthday party or something like that. And then it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to like set yourself aside from like what everybody else is doing? Or are you going to say, you know what, I can have a piece of wedding cake or whatever, right? I mean, like, and that's where I think where so many people, they just get off, right? And then they're like, okay, well, so they have a wedding cake and then it's the day after the wedding and they go to brunch and they're like, I'm going to have a chocolate croissant, right? And before you know it, that's it. It's all over, right? I mean, is this something that you see a lot? I mean, and so what do you do? I mean, how do you, like, okay, so like, a long time ago I quit smoking, right? And I learned when quitting smoking that in order to quit smoking, you can't ever have a puff, because if you have a puff, you are at that point smoking again, right? So like, when it comes to like diet, is it the same thing where like, hey, if you have that, blueberry muffin, does that basically mean that you are now off the track, or how do you manage that?
It depends on the person. Some people are moderators. They can have a little bit of something without going crazy. And some are abstainers. So I am a moderator. So on Thanksgiving Day and on Christmas Day, I have what I want. I still have to pay attention a few days later, because some of those things, if you have sugar or simple carbs, they tend to want more. So I will be hungry for sugar 2 or 3 days later, and I don't normally use sugar. So they can have an effect on you. You just have to be prepared for that so that you know how to proceed. There's some people who just can't touch it. They're like alcoholics. They cannot touch it without then going into a spiral. So you have to kind of know yourself and what works for you. Because like you and the smoking, you have a puff and you're off.
Yeah, it's like it's an addictive personality. I guess I think I have an addictive personality. I get obsessed with things and have a hard time stepping away necessarily from time to time. Yeah. So now about the sugar. So like sugar is like the bane of my existence, and I think it's the bane of all of existences. And I think that that's a lot of the reason why people are so fat here, is because like when I was a kid. They said, like, hey, when you're buying cereal at the store, look in the first 3 ingredients. And if any of the first 3 ingredients are sugar or corn syrup or whatever, then don't get that. Well, that eliminated like 98% of all the cereals. But lately, in the past couple of years or so, I've said, let me look at all the other ingredients. And damn it, if almost every single thing that is packaged on a shelf, there's sugar in the first 3 ingredients. And so I don't know how you're expected, if you're going to be eating this stuff, to have anything but an addiction for sugar, right? Because basically that sugar feeds your gut microbiome, and then when the sugar gets gone, like it releases these hormones, which basically says,
Yeah.
I need more sugar because
Yeah.
I'm a, you know, like I'm a bacteria that feeds on the sugar. So like, what do, right? I mean, like basically, like the supply chain, the food chain is setting us up to basically be fat, overweight, and addicted to sugar. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, there is that bliss point, you see. It's the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt. And it's what we love. And the food industry knows that. And to sell more, they made sure things hit the bliss point. So that's where you get all of that sugar. And I do that shop the perimeter kind of thing. I make a lot of the things that we eat because I can't, if I start doing sugar, I get mean, quite honestly. And I did not know that until I had been away from sugar for a while. In fact, at Christmas one year, my husband and his sister were going off on a business trip like the next day after Christmas. And my mother-in-law, bless her, put a plate in front of me that had, I don't know, a cake and pie and cookie and something else. And I looked over the table at him and he said, "Go ahead, I'm not going to be here." Because he knew it would make me absolutely crazy. So I choose to avoid it as much as possible. It doesn't mean I don't do sweet things, but I try to be careful about what's in it. So you kind of have to take yourself in hand and decide what it is you really want. You know, some people can do sugar once a week, and that's fine. Some people need to stay away from it altogether. Some people can do more, but, you know, they may have to burn those calories in a different way.
Right. So you said shop the perimeter, and I guess what you're referring to is like when you go to the supermarket, you avoid the middle of the supermarket where all the stuff is, and you go to the sides where like the produce section is and the meat section, right? So, so what does the inside of your refrigerator look like? Is it not full of like Miracle Whip and like Heinz 57 and?
No. Yeah, I just got a bit adamant about it for a long time. I make our ketchup. I make any sauces. I don't make cheese anymore. I have done it before, but I haven't done it lately. I make all of our own bread. Although I make it for himself because I don't do bread anymore.
Just say no to bread.
Just say no. I mean, here's the thing. If you go to Europe and you have bread, it will affect you completely differently because it's a different grain. In the Depression or thereafter, they switched our wheat from those tall amber waves of grain to red dwarf wheat, and we just weren't made to consume that. So we use that because it is plentiful. It's a shorter stalk and it can hold more little grain seeds, but it's just not so good for our bodies. And they don't use it in Europe. So if you stay away from bread here and you happen to go to Europe, just enjoy the bread because it's a whole different grain.
Right. Well, that, and they don't spray Roundup, glyphosate or whatever it is all over their wheat and all over anything. It's banned in Europe, right? I mean, and a lot of people say that that's what the gluten, right? Yeah. So like gluten allergies are not a thing in Europe, really.
No.
Not like they are here, right? Like, you know, and why is that, right? A lot of people say it's actually nothing to do with gluten. They say it's glyphosate, the Roundup that we spray over here, right? And it could be the kind of gluten in the wheat that we grow versus what they grow. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But like I try not to eat bread, right? Like, so I do once in a while, you know, like, you know, I try to cut down on that. And you know, I think a lot of people in Europe also don't eat, you know, like they're hip, you know, like pasta, right? All this, you know, like it's empty carbs, right? Like it's still empty carbs. It might be slightly less toxic carbs, but it's still empty carbs, right? You know, so what's your feeling about empty carbs? Is that just something to like be avoided in general, or can it be part of a healthy lifestyle?
I think it depends on your body. I mean, that's the thing. Some people can eat it, no problem. I can't. So I follow a low carb diet all the time because it fits my body better, right? It doesn't fit my cousin's body as well. So it depends on what works for your body. And Europeans do not eat fast. You go out for dinner, it is an evening experience, so that you eat whatever amuse-bouche you start with, so whatever appetizer, and there's time that goes by, and then you eat, and they don't give you as big a portion, and then you have your coffee or your cheese or your dessert or whatever, but it is an evening, so your body has time to go, oh gosh, I think I'm satisfied now. Whereas most Americans, if they have dinner together at all, it might be a 10-15 minute experience. Your body hasn't had time to figure out that, oh, I'm satisfied now. And we just keep eating until we're too full. So carbs, simple carbs, I try to avoid them myself because they don't do good things for my body. But someone else, it might fit theirs. There are no blankets here.
Right. I've not met that person who it would be good for theirs. My understanding is that your body doesn't actually need carbs at all to function. Like you could function just fine with 0 carbs in your diet. Not that I would recommend that. And in fact, I eat plenty of carbs, like blueberries, for example, right? Like I love blueberries. There are some carbs in blueberries, not a lot of carbs, but there are some. Beans, there's carbs. Love the beans. I like high fiber, right? So like a lot of those high fiber foods, have carbs in them. But they call that like net carb 0 or whatever. Is that the thing, that net carb thing? Like you go buy these like net 0 carb tortillas. That's fake, right?
Okay, so I happen to know Doctors Michael and Mary Dan Eads. Dr. Michael wrote the book that introduced the concept of net carbs, and he has regretted it ever since because people use it in the way that's not intended. So yes, you can chemically manage it to be 0 carbs, but it's still probably, it could have 15 carbs in it, and they put enough stuff in there to zero it out because they'll put fiber in,
right?
But it's not a fiber that works in the way we like fiber to work. So I don't believe in net carbs myself.
Right. I think a little pro tip is, you know what, you want to be healthy, just eat like natural foods that like your body was like, created to eat, And if you just do that, if you just eat real unprocessed food, so there's like lightly processed food, right? Like, like flour is processed, right? There's a lot of things that are lightly processed, you'll be fine, and if you just keep on eating Pop-Tarts and Hot Pockets and, washing it down with Coca-Cola, like it's going to catch up to you, particularly when you get over 60. So
or 30.
Over 30 at any time, really. I shudder because, like my poor kids, right? Like my older kid, he's getting better with his diet now because he's super into being healthy and whatnot, at least physically fit, right? But my younger kid, he's a junk food addict like me, right? That's how I was raised, right? Good food came out of a box or a can or a bag, right?
Little packet.
A little packet. And that's how he is. Although I do my best to he also has a very limited palate, right? Like sugar, fat, salt, right? That's what he likes. If you could invent one little like a sugar, fat, salt lick, that's probably what he would eat all the time. So it is tough. But I want to talk about your book. You wrote a book, didn't you? Write a book. Your book is called "What's Really Eating You." What's that book about?
I didn't do my journey. I just used some stories from my journey. But I wrote it in such a way that I think someone could, if they have the wherewithal to stick with it, they could find their way through weight loss. It's all the things that we struggle with. When I was writing it, I was talking to the editor, and they said, okay, you really need more to your chapter on diet and exercise, because diet was basically pick one, and exercise was basically do some. Because So we had to fill that out. There's also a chapter called oh, crumbs. It's like obesity is the culture approved sin.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, like, also, like, for example, like alcoholism, right? Like my dad was an alcoholic and, whatnot. I don't really believe this whole thing, like, it's an inherited thing, really. I personally don't buy it. And I've yet to see the genetic code that says that's the case. It's sociological, really. It's how you were raised, right? And I think the same thing, extends to food, right? Or lack of exercise, right? Like my parents never took us hiking, right? God forbid, right? Like we drag our kids hiking, not as much anymore because they've gotten much better at like, throwing a fit when we, try and drag them along, but we still do drag them along sometimes to go hiking, but I just think a lot of it has to do with how you were raised. How do you overcome that? Like, let's just say you're 50 years old, your kids are finally out of the house. It's just you and the hubby, right? And you have 50 years of bad habits. And finally you want to drop the 100 pounds that you need to drop to get to like which that's a reality for a lot of people, right? They should weigh, 125 and they weigh 225, right? So like how do you break a lifetime of bad habits like that and actually get healthy now that you don't have to worry about Hot Pockets in your refrigerator, to keep the kids, satisfied when they come home from soccer or whatever?
Funny you should say that, Seb, because I was staring down my 50th birthday when I decided to make a change. I didn't have 100 pounds to lose. I had lost 30, 40, 50 pounds many times over the years. But that's when I realized, oh, I'm an emotional eater. I need to address that in order to not sabotage my diet every single time. Because that's what would happen. I would be doing really well and then something would happen and I'd go off the rails. So I thought, okay, how do we fix that? Now, having the counseling background, I knew that it had to have an emotional component. So I grabbed a colleague and said, hey, you got to help me. And she did. And I reached my goal weight the week before my 50th birthday. Okay, this is not something men want to talk about, but during menopause. All right, so this whole idea that you can't lose weight during menopause is not true. It's just not true. You can. It can be a little harder, but for me it turned out to be a better thing because my husband did not need to get an apartment while I was going through menopause because the way I changed my eating mellowed me out so that I wasn't nearly so up and down emotionally, which is one of the things that plagues women during menopause. So it was the best thing I could have done for my body, for my experience, and for my dear sweet husband who puts up with me. God love him. So you have to choose what it is you actually want to do. How do you want your life to be? And we have no magic diet, no magic pill, no potion that's going to do it for you. Because any pill, potion, or powder that says it can may do it while you're on that. But as soon as you come off, you've got to figure out how to do it for yourself or the weight comes right back, just like a diet. In fact, when I opened my practice, I think I had maybe 10 clients in that first 6 months. Half of them were 5 years away from having had gastric bypass, and they had regained every pound and more. So we had to figure out then, what do you do when everything in your body is saying, go get me some food? And we have to meet those moments one by one, change our response to it, deal with whatever emotional stress is keeping you stirred up, and then you can make these changes last forever.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of moving out, out of your house when you were going through menopause, right? I mean, so menopause is hormonal, right? I believe, right? And so also, also our own diets make us hormonal, right? Because like like
Yes.
when your blood sugar crashes, right, hormones go out, right?
Yes.
Based on the foods that you eat, that will affect your mood considerably. So if you are able to like maintain a steady state, a healthy diet that keeps everything just humming right along, I think that's got to help with menopause or whatever else might be going on in your life. And
Surprise, surprise.
and when you say that, I mean, a lot of women think that they can't lose weight when they're in menopause, and that's a myth. It's like I always think about like no one fat came out of Auschwitz, right? I mean, like you can absolutely lose weight. Like a lot of times people will like say like, oh, I'm older now and my metabolism has slowed, right? Well, that's true. Your metabolism slows every year, but what you're talking about is your base metabolic rate, right? And like it slows by like 1% a year or something like that, right? So like you go from a BMR of 850 down to like 750 after 10 years or whatever, right? Or less than that even, right? So it's like it's not so that's like 100 calories a day difference, right? Like that's not like 1,000 calories a day difference, So I think people make up all kinds of excuses why they can't lose weight, but actually, I mean, is it really? I mean, I always hear calories in, calories out. Is it really just that simple, or some people say it depends on the kind of calories, blah blah blah. What's your thought about that?
Yeah, it's a. I mean, you could eat Pop-Tarts and limit yourself to your daily caloric need, whatever that is, and probably not gain weight. If somebody did a McDonald's diet and they didn't gain weight, but it depends on how many you actually take in. And if I ate Pop-Tarts, this is the thing I know about myself. I am a very fast oxidizer. When I was in high school and I would have Captain Crunch, my favorite cereal ever, for breakfast, within an hour I was hungry again, right? And it is a blood sugar issue. So if there's a difference between taking in the number of calories that keep you satisfied and taking in a specific number of calories. Because those Pop-Tarts, I'm going to be hungry again very quickly. So it's not just calories in, calories out. The type of calorie and how your body processes it. Which is why I do a nutrition blueprint with my clients, so they know what will work for their bodies. Now, whether or not they do it, it's up to them, but they'll know what works. So some of them will be more geared toward low carb, and some will be higher carb, or some will be somewhere in the middle. But knowing that, so that you can be armed with it, is really important. And in fact, it changed how I ate when I found that out, because doing the more low-fat thing kept me tired, hungry, and cranky all the time. So when I got the message to go more low-carb, it made me a nicer person because I wasn't hungry all the time.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that a lot of people, when they, they get hangry or whatever, that's basically blood sugar crash, essentially, right? And like, if you don't eat the carbs, you're not going to have a blood sugar crash, at least nowhere to that extent. And yeah, you could eat Pop-Tarts all day, but you're going to be hungry all the time. And what I tell people, because I try to be low carb, and sometimes I'll do like a cleanse or where I won't have hardly any carbs for a while. I tell people, like, listen, it's about 3 days that you're going to have to spend getting all that, like all that, whatever it is, out of your system, right? All those, it's not carbs, it's, you probably know it better than I do, of course, right? All those, well, it's not glucose, and then there's glycogen, right? All that, you get all that out of your system, and then at that point, your hunger pangs will go away, and it becomes much easier to not eat carbs, just have like a relatively healthy diet. So that's been my experience, and I think that a lot of people would have that same experience, and that's what makes dieting so hard, is because they continue to eat crap, right? They eat less of it, right? But they're still hungry all the time because they're eating the foods that keep them in a hungry state.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you got to know what works for your body, because when you start giving your body what it needs, what works for it, it makes such a difference in how you feel about it. I mean, some people do really well with a lot of vegetables and starches of various sorts, but my grandmother, back in about 1972, said to me, Renee, if you watch your sugars and starches, you'll be fine. There are books from like the 1800s where doctors were saying, watch the sugars and starches. And in 1968, there were these two Harvard researchers who were paid $40,000 each in 1968 to say that the problem with the American diet was fat, not sugar. And they knew it was sugar, but they got paid off. So our food pyramid was shaped on having less fat. And
Right.
that's and sugar just came into everything, and look what happened to us in the 80s and 90s. People just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Bless them. It wasn't their fault. Sugar just infiltrated our systems.
Right. It's everywhere. I mean, there's like a sugar cartel, really, and where is RFK Jr. in all this, right? Why isn't that nut job out there, like, fixing our food chain, right? I mean, like, isn't that what he got into office to do?
Well,
no comment.
He changed the pyramid. I mean, come on.
But I still happen to notice that when I read the ingredients on my food labels, that there's still just tons of sugar, right? I mean, like that has to be, that's like a public health crisis, right? More than vaccines or any of this other crazy stuff. It's just really, it's the sugar in our food is literally killing us.
Yeah, but that, the food industry is a behemoth that takes a little time to adjust. So hopefully, now that they've adjusted it some, that it will begin to change. But, people have been trying to change the recommendations. I know of people who've been trying to change them for the last decade, and I'm sure they were trying to change before. But, lobbyists are powerful.
Right. The sugar lobby is a huge thing. Well, even in Peru, which my wife is Peruvian, and we were down there when we were down there in Christmas. We were just there, and but I go there all the time, or not all the time, but once every year or two or whatever. For years now, on their food packaging, they have these big, huge signs saying "high in sugar," right? Like big like the Surgeon General's warning on cigarettes. They have that. Like on soda and ice cream and like all kinds and stuff, and they high in sugar, but they also have like another one like, like elevated sugar or something like that, right? I mean, like they make it really clear, even in Peru, which is by no means a model of good governance. They have it together that much where they can at least tell the people, hey, this is toxic. Be careful. So, well, I hope that they finally do get it together and manage to get all that sugar out of our food supply, because it hasn't done us any favors. But I want to ask you something else that's really of keen interest to me, and that is being a TEDx speaker. Tell us how you became a TEDx speaker. I gotta know. Spill it. Let's hear it.
It was an accident, to be honest. I was in a speaker program, and they said, okay, there's this one going on. You might want to apply for it. And I was like, what is a TEDx? But okay, I'll practice my talk. And they happened to take me. And we've got 800,000 views or something silly like that. I ran out of people to tell when we passed 50, so I don't know where they come from, but I'm very pleased.
Right. So you're part of a speakers program. What is that? A speakers program, like the National Speakers Association? Those guys?
No. It was a coaching program. I was trying to, husband wanted me to be a speaker, and I was like, okay, I don't know anything about that. So I hired a coach, as I want to do when I don't know what to do. And they had heard about this one that was near them. It was in Wilmington, Delaware. And I was like, okay, I'll have to come to, I've never been to Delaware. I have to do that. But I applied, and they took me. And then you have to do all of these different training sessions. And you have benchmarks that you have to meet. You have to give them a video of you speaking with, whatever notes you need, and then mostly off script and then completely off script. And they give you feedback on it and help you try to be a better speaker, because the thing that TED wants is for you to do the best job you possibly can. But ours was condensed. I think I found out in February, late February, and our talk was in May, so it was a highly condensed thing.
Yeah, right.
It's usually
It's
more
a big
like
deal.
a year.
So they have the big TEDx, and they have like little regional TEDx's. Were you on the big TEDx or a regional TEDx?
Well, I think what you're thinking about is the TED Talk, and that's where famous people speak.
Oh, right. I see. Okay.
And all the regional ones are TEDx.
You're all TEDx's.
And we have to specify that it was TEDx.
Right. Not a TED Talk, a TEDx.
Right.
Got it. But they're the same organization, or are they
Same
completely...
organization, but again, the TED is for famous people who are invited to speak at an event once a year, and TEDx can, is around the world.
Oh, right. And so you have to go and like perform in like a live audience. Is that correct? Right? There's like an auditorium or whatever.
Yeah, you spend the entire day because you have to be there for all the talks.
You have to be there for all the talks.
If you're a speaker and you're not there, they have very strict rules. If you're not there, they don't have to publish your talk. You can do it, but they don't have to publish it. And, they, like someone said, why don't you make clips of that and put that on your website? I said, because you can't.
You can't.
No.
It has to live on their YouTube channel, or...
I mean, you can link it somehow. I'm not technical, but you can put it on your own website as a whole and have it count back through their organization, but you can't chop it up.
Right. So how did you come upon a topic that would be enjoyed by 800,000 people? What was that development process like?
Well, I went to what I was doing, because emotional eating apparently is a thing. So my title was Lose Weight and Keep It Off, Emotional Eating. And I did not know so many people struggled with it, but apparently they do. There are other people who are more famous than I who've had millions on that particular topic. So if you get to do one, pick your title with care, because that's what will speak for you.
Well, same thing like a subject line of an email, right? I mean, like you always want to have that hook, and then you need to have your angle, right? That makes it new and somehow different from all the other people talking about that actual subject. So, what has it been like for your business after the TEDx talk? Did you was your phone start ringing, or did People Magazine call, or like what happened?
Well, I haven't had People Magazine call, but I still get a number of clients from that, because anytime I do an intake, I'm like, okay, how did you hear about me? And very often they say TEDx, and it's what put me in touch with these people around the world. You see,
right? Okay.
Texas is big, but it's not that big.
Right, not as big as California.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if people want to get a hold of you and they want to work on, some of these dietary and lifestyle issues and self-sabotage and all that, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can go to reneejonesinternational.com. Do you want a free gift?
We love free gifts.
ReneeLive.com is a guide on how to manage emotional eating.
A guide on how to manage emotional eating. So I will go and check that out. I don't know that I personally emotionally eat, or is stress an emotion? Is stress an emotion? Is boredom an emotion?
My husband keeps saying, I stress eat. Love, that's an emotion. So, yes, stress, boredom, loneliness, frustration, any of those emotions, anything that gets you stirred up and want to reach for food. Here's the thing, Seb. So often, we're just looking for life, but we'll take a Twinkie.
That is very profound, Renee. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, well, we're going to wrap things up here. But before we do, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that maybe I should have?
Would you like a a way to get a handle on emotional eating? Just a
Absolutely.
quick. Okay, I have this acronym. It's not hard to overcome emotional eating, but you do have to get the hang of it. And hang is the acronym. So H, am I hungry? Because if you are, you may need something to eat. But if you're not, what is the A? What is the attraction to food for you in that moment? N, what do you actually need? Because you may need some help. You may need a hug. You may need to pet the dog. You may need some input from someone else. What do you need? Because if you then go get that, it'll soothe you more than food ever possibly could.
All right, terrific. And I always tell people, hey, just have a glass of water, right?
It's a place
if
to
you
start.
are not, if you're not sure if you're hungry or not, just have some water. We can all drink more water, especially as we age. All right, Renee, hey, thank you so much for joining me here today on 60 Plus Uncensored. I really do appreciate it, and we will catch you on the flip side. That's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Renee Jones for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor, do Renee a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know someone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation on our Facebook group, 60 Plus Living. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.